It's been 1,385 days since President Trump left office, and America has brought him back. Not happy with the Biden-Harris administration, Trump and JD Vance will be leading the USA from 2025. This is Trump's triumph on QuewsNews, the election debrief. Joining me in the studio, I've got Dr. Amara. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Curtis, for having me in the studio today on your show.
Thank you for joining us. You're very interested into social, political kind of situations. What's your initial thoughts on a Trump presidency from 2025?
Well, the thing is, the way things were going, I'm not surprised with the result of the elections, even though if you look at the pre-election polls, they were quite close. But considering the policies and their views about how things will be run, both the candidates, there were some things that were conflicting. And I think the highlight of their campaign was war. And clearly, where Trump promised the public that he will try to, all his policies will be based on improving the economic status of the country, he almost gave, not almost, he actually was giving a very clear message to the world that he's anti-war, because he talked about trying to stop the war in Ukraine, in Palestine, Israel, and so on and so forth. So clearly, who wants war in this day and age? And where we see that economy is seriously affected globally, people want end of war and they want peace because everyone's lives are affected by the war in different parts of the world. So in terms of, is it a good news or bad news? We do not know. The time will tell us. But for the time being, I think anybody who campaigns to be anti-war should be the winner.
And when it comes to war, during Trump's previous presidency, there was no wars. There was two major wars that broke out under a Harris administration. She is vice president, but two wars. It doesn't stand up well for her, does it?
Absolutely. And also their policies of Democrats, we clearly saw they were not listening to the public opinion. And even though if you look at the media, they were pro-Harris. And a lot of people are looking at the victory of Trump as a defeat to establishment as well as the media, because we think media can help people win or lose. But clearly that is not wrong, and I think public is the winner in this election.
Well, it's not just us two who you'll be hearing from today in London. We are also joined by a gentleman, Aftad Sayal, who lives in Texas, Houston. Welcome to the show, Aftad.
Thank you.
So what's the initial response at the moment in America?
America is excited. America is looking forward for a new era of peace and economic prosperity in America.
And what's the Texas voted Republican, so you've got your candidate in. You are, I'm right in saying, a Trump supporter.
Well, actually, I was a Bernie Sanders supporter in 2016, and then I voted for Trump in 2016. Then I voted for him in 2020. But this election, I voted for Jill Stein.
So what drove you to vote for Trump? What is driving Americans? And he's not just won the electoral vote, which we'll get into in a moment. He's won the popular vote. So what's driven Americans this time away from a Democratic politician to a former TV star?
Well, the Trump message was resonating to the public. The Democratic Party for last couple of election cycle, they have started this cancel culture. If somebody does not agree with you, you cancel them, you block them, you shut their voices. And this was a big thing. I mean, if you look at the reaction of people or their record, they canceled Donald Trump during his presidency from Twitter, from Facebook, from YouTube. I mean, that was the eye-opening moment, in my opinion, that American people said, what is going on? If you can shut a president of United States when he's in office, you can shut his voice, then how about ordinary people? You can tell them that they are for freedom of speech and human rights and all that agenda they've been selling to people for last 20 years. And people were said enough is enough. And they have alternative, channels to get their facts straight. They can check what media is propagating. And this was a clear message American people are sending, that they are for freedom of speech, they are for free choice, and they want to hear the opinion. And one must realize that freedom of speech is not for the speech we like. Freedom of speech is for the speech we hate. And that's the speech we must protect.
So is this more of liking Trump's policies, or is this more of making a statement for a second time? What's the, or is it a mix of both?
It is both. I mean, Trump is totally against the war. This is one thing. He's against China, putting a restriction on Chinese trade, putting tariff on Chinese import to United States. He's for re-industrialization of United States. And this is the basic problem our people are facing. And nobody want to talk about that. That why people are so angry all of a sudden in the United States. And the reason is from 2000 when millennial turned, United States and other Western countries, they start deindustrializing their countries. And all those blue collar workers, they were getting decent jobs as semiconductor factories and auto factories and computer factories. Those all jobs were gone slowly to China and other countries. Now, in recent year, average American, they can't find a decent paying job. If you look at the actual job or wages growth numbers, the wages has been stagnant for last 40 years almost. And the inflation has gone up. So people even can't afford to put food on the table. And this is why you have the homeless crisis risen tremendously after 2008-9 financial crisis. And that produced Occupy Wall Street movement. And that anger is channelized through that time, and it's going on it has been showing its impact in the national election, sometime in the form of Bernie Sanders, sometime in the form of President Trump.
Aftad, we do have a third guest on the show this week. We've got Akmal Makhdoom, who's in Suffolk, who's also in the UK. Akmal, you are a former psychologist. I assume you are still a psychologist with the knowledge. Is Trump sane to lead the United States? It's a common question among Democrats. They, this time, found themselves slandering his character a little bit more. From a psychological perspective, we're not asking for an official diagnosis, but does he have the sanity to lead the United States, to lead the modern world?
Well, the thing is that the people respect strength, and they like clarity. Trump's message isn't about complex economics, it's not about complex world issues and so on. His message is very clear. I will make you strong, I will reduce taxes, I will curb on illegal migration, I will make you respected. Now, he not only says the strong word, but he also appears strong. He is a bully. He is, he dominates the room. And that is the characteristic of a strong persona, strong personality, and a strong leader. Now, the problem with the US as the world leader was that it had a geriatric president who was actually decaying before your eyes. And the problem was that despite the economic improvements, despite massive reduction in unemployment rates and inflation rates and so on, and overall all the indices of economy were going upwards, that feeling wasn't being conveyed. So you may have a few dollars more in your pocket, you may have a few more jobs, but do you feel good about yourself? Do you feel that your country, which has had this image of the world leadership and strength, basically, and what transpired also was that in the recent wars, it seemed that the war machine had overwhelmed American politics. You know, and that is where the only person who had the hope of having an independent view to be able to overcome that influence of the war machine and the military industrial complex appeared to be Trump. So I believe that he appeared more like a strong parent whose steer the country needed and a strong voice, because there wasn't a strong voice. What was coming from the presidency and the Oval Office was, mumbled talk. And Kamala Harris did not exude any strength.
Aftad, was that the feeling that was on the ground in America? Was that the feeling that the Americans felt that there was no backbone almost in the vice president?
Absolutely right. I agree with 100% with Dr. Akmal's point of view. He's a fine psychologist and he has comprehensively talked about the whole thing. Trump is an alpha male. He likes to be prominent and he likes to make simple decisions and he uses simple language. And this is why he resonates with ordinary people. I mean, ordinary people do not have that kind of intellect to understand complex problems.
But Aftab, may I ask you something? Is it that America is not ready to have a lady as a president? Could that be a misogynist attitude of public, or it's just a false impression? Because
I think it's a false impression.
They see an alpha male in Trump, and Kamala doesn't have that kind of strong personality. Do you think that this is about Americans not accepting a female leader in that position?
That's not true. I mean, Hillary Clinton was a very strong lady and she was able to contest the election and she actually won the popular vote in 2016. But the way American system is set up, presidential election, she did not score enough delegates. So this is, I think, not true that American society is a misogynist against women. I have been living in United States for 32 years. My wife is American. I move around in a society. I haven't faced that kind of racism which is propagated by a Democratic Party as a mainstream problem. So when the Kamala Harris does not have any record. I mean, when she was running in a primary, she got booted out in a first round of debates. And at that time, there was no Donald Trump confronting her. Actually, she was confronted by Tulsi Gabbard, who was also a fellow Democrat running for the presidential election in 2020. And she knocked her out on her record when she was Attorney General of California and San Francisco, District Attorney of San Francisco. And she has a terrible record against Black people. I mean, she would not even let the evidence come to the court for this guy who was on death row, and she opposed that evidence till it was ordered by a superior court to be produced, and that man was in prison, if I'm not mistaken, for like 20, he was facing a life sentence. So she has a cruel record about, and American don't want, I mean, even though if you see it's a democratic society for 250 years, I mean, they love their military, but they do not like to be governed by men in uniform. So this is why you never had any ex-military background person becoming a United States president.
I mean, Dr. Amira had
So-
a very good point. A common question at the moment being asked around on platforms all over the world is America ready for a female president? Now, a lot of people thought when, as you say, Kamala lost the initial primary to get onto a ballot, thought that Biden maybe picked her because she was a female and a black female. Let's not beat around the bush with that.
Right.
Is that, was it too late for Biden to withdraw? Or was it that Kamala just was not good enough? Sorry,
you're asking me?
Aftad. Was it that Biden withdrew too late, or was it that Kamala just wasn't good enough? Was she just never good enough from the
I
start?
think she's not a good enough. I mean, the current establishment, they want a yes man. They don't want a strong personality. This is why they don't like Donald Trump, because Donald Trump has his own point of view, and Kamala does not has depth of a leader. I mean, she cannot even carry on a conversation with my son for maybe 5 minutes.
I mean,
You cannot have her talk about peace. I mean, you just give her a question. What are you going to do about peace in Middle East? She will not tell you. If you ask Donald Trump, he will say, this war would not have ever happen if I was a president. If you ask him a question about Ukraine.
Key pledges from
Yeah.
Trump include the wars, which we've spoken about. He says, and I quote, "I'm not going to start a war, I'm going to stop wars." Now, he's also been quoted saying he's going to end wars before he even comes into power. So that's going to be an interesting thing before the end of the year. Do you believe that? I mean, during his presidency between 2016 and 2020, no wars were started that America got involved in. Biden, Harris take office. They withdraw from Afghanistan, which, let's face it, was one of the biggest fails of a mission like that in recent time. Saw the Taliban rise up again within the Middle East. The Ukraine war starts in 2022. And then October 7th last year was the Hamas attack on Israel, which has just been ongoing. And it got to it's probably still at one of the most critical points at the moment. War it's a huge part of this election. Can Trump, yes or no, can Trump stop these wars before he comes into office?
Absolutely, I believe so.
And in the studio, Dr. Amara, do you believe he could?
Well, we just hope so, because that is one of the promises he made. And I think a lot of Arabs or Muslims voted for him because of his promise that he will try and stop the wars. I believe that he should do that. And he is not actually, his policies, they are against what establishment wants him to do. And this is what Aftab has just said, that establishment didn't want him to be winning the election. And now he has done so. He has to stand by his promises and policies and that he has already made to public. Otherwise, public will be very disappointed. And I think, considering he's a very strong personality who did not care about what the media was saying about him or what the establishment expected of him, he said, he spoke his mind, he said what he wanted to say, and we just hope that he keeps his promises.
I mean, he has promised to end all the wars. He has said that Israel has, it was right to defend itself, but it's now time to withdraw. He has insinuated the right move may be for Ukraine to give up some land. Zelensky has invited him over to see what's going on the ground. I imagine these next couple of months before January 20th, he is going to be visiting these leaders, visiting these countries, and people are going to want to see action. I know he's not president for another couple of months, but people are going to want to see action immediately.
Yeah. But I mean, if you look at the results, a lot of people believe that he has won this election because Muslims voted for him. But if you look at the victory, it is far more than just the Muslim votes.
Yes.
So a lot of, you have got the figures, the majority, I think 71% of white men and 65% of white women have voted for him. Likewise, Latinos as well as black men, they have voted for him. So it's not just his anti-war campaign. There are so many other things that he wants to bring to his country. And mainly stopping war is basically is to improve the economy of his own country, and he wants to work for the welfare of his own countrymen and society. So this is what Americans want to see, if I'm not wrong. And who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want peace?
Yeah. As a global race, we know no one wants war. Akmal, when it comes to watching him when he's delivering these speeches, is he believable from a psychological? Is he saying it with genuine belief, or is he saying it to get votes?
I think it's a mixture. I think he's obviously pragmatic. I mean, that's a polite word for a politician. He's pragmatic in that sense that there are things that he says to rouse the populist sentiment. Then there are slogans that he raises for patriotism and so on and so forth. And then there are, so he appeals, obviously, he appeals to the right wing. But if you look at his background, all his life he'd been a Democrat. He lived in New York. He was a Democrat. He's one of the largest, donors to the Democratic Party once upon a time. But then now, I think his pragmatism has moved him, to the other side. But there are things that he says which he definitely believes in. Now, in terms of wars, as I said, that there are certain things that he would say for audiences in the United States of America. And there are things that he believes in which affect people outside the US. So there may be some racism or, as Mediason says, a degree of fascism or, Nazi-like behaviors or statements that some of his party people or maybe he himself, those are attributed to him. But I think that is a local or an American consumption. But at the same time, when he's talking of wars and so on, I think he's really believable because could you ever imagine an American president against the advice of everybody just going and shaking hands with the rocket boy? Because that's what he called Kim Jong-un when, he said, I'll, decimate you and destroy you. Now, what we have not so far talked about, he's actually said the I word. He said that he wants peace with Iran. Now, that goes totally against the Israeli policy, the local, Jewish influence in the U.S., the establishment, because what is the main enemy of the United States? And during an election campaign, one candidate who is blamed for all that is saying, I would like to go to Iran. Now, that is an unbelievable statement. So I think that there are these, audiences that he addresses, but in terms of war, I think is absolutely right. But because he knows that war is extremely expensive in terms of human cost, economic cost, happiness and popularity and so on. And that is why when you don't wage wars, the military-industrial complex isn't, consuming all your money, and that money can be diverted because he says, look at the airports in the Middle East, the Qatar and Dubai and so on, and look at the dilapidated roads and bridges and airports in the US. So I think that he wants to do that. And if you look at his apartment, you look at his buildings, they're all gold and glitzy and glamorous, and the way he wears himself and so on. So he wants to have US, and when he says that he wants to make US great again, he wants it to be great in terms of economy, in terms of its influence, and in terms of how it appears. the rich man, the rich woman of the world. So I think these are the things that appeal to people, and I think he is a package. So with all the negative, you will reap a lot of the positive. I mean, it may be in the beginning there'll be massive problems with immigration, and the way there was this 5-country ban and visa restrictions and so on. I think maybe there is something in the beginning, but as you see that, and as you saw in his first term, it all got reversed,
Yeah.
and he was an entirely changed president.
We'll get onto the immigration shortly. That's a key topic of one of his pledges. But in his first term, he agreed the Abraham's Accord, which was with Israel in the Middle East, to bring peace to the area. So does he go back in there and wave around the agreement? And does he say, look, we had a deal. What's happened? What's the feeling in America? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Let the Americans say first. Yes.
Well, responsibility goes to you, Aftad. So what's the feeling in America? Can he bring peace to the Middle East?
Oh, absolutely. Trump has a strong personality, and his views about wars they are not hidden from anybody. Even some of his leaked video where he met with the Palestinian Authority chairman Mahmoud Abbas, and he was making comment that he was such a nice gentleman, and I would like to carve a peace deal between Palestinian and Israel. But I met with the Bibi Netanyahu, and my feeling is he don't want to make a peace deal. So Trump, behind the scene, I mean, there is a element that Trump is serious about doing the peace deal. And like Dr. Saab was saying, he liked to be remembered. I mean, he likes good stuff. He wanted to make America great again. And before this new establishment took over during the Clinton time and the Bush's time and Barack Obama's time and then Biden's time, this whole doctrine, Trump is against this doctrine of expansion and intervention, invasion, and he wants to sell his capitalism, his buildings, his hotels, his resorts to the world, not the bomb and creating a chaos in the world. And this is the thing which people get positive vibes from him, even though he says stuff which is not actually mainstream material sometimes, and people get offended by that, and he get blamed by being racist and stuff, which I don't think he's a racist. He's a very liberal person, and all his life he's been hanging with liberal. He was friends with Clintons and other liberal circles.
A big part of his first term was the slogan, build the wall, build a wall, which is obviously on the Mexican border with the United States. This time around, a substantial rise in Latinos voted for Donald Trump. And it was first and second generation Latinos who came here the tough way, as they'd call it, the right way, as they would also call it. And they believe those crossing the border should also do the same. So not only has he got the American people saying, we want immigration control because we want to keep our country, but he's also got Latinos who have moved there legally saying the same. Now, he is going to put the National Guard ready on the border, should it come to it, with the Mexican border, that is. And he's going to put a travel ban on Muslim majority countries. Now, some will see this as a negative thing. We'll get the feeling first in the USA. What's the generic feeling when it comes to these two specific policies on immigration?
Well, immigration, this is actually the Hispanic, they are terrified by the immigration problem. The reason is they are the first effectee of illegal immigration. Houston, Texas, and Arizona, New Mexico, these states, California, they have a lot of Hispanic people coming from Mexico legally and illegally. So and last couple of years, if you look at during the Biden time, actually 4 years, I mean, there are like 10 million people illegal entered into United States. And they are suppressing the wages of people they already in the United States. It's a demand and supply issue. So when you put more, people are already hurting because of deindustrialization in the United States. And then you put 10 million more people, they're gonna be working, they're gonna be cutting each other's throat. I mean, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand this phenomenon. This is the reason that when he talked about immigration, even the minorities, they are agreeing with him that they need to be using the right channel to get in. And the other thing is rise of gangs in the United States. This is a not a Hispanic problem, not an Asian problem. This is American society problem. My kids go to school, other people's kids go to school, and these people are selling drugs. This is not a hoax. The gangs are invading United States poor neighborhoods. Like a whole apartment complex in San Antonio was allegedly reported occupied by the gangs, and even police cannot enter into some areas. So these are the concerns, regardless of what color of your skin is. When it comes to people's kids' education, their society, where their neighborhoods are, they don't want drug gangs to be moving on the streets of their neighborhoods. So when Trump talks about
when
Go
it
ahead.
comes to immigration, a huge topic that gets brought up is racism. Are people being racist or are they being patriotic? I mean, it's a very tough and fine line for people to cross over. I'll come to you in a moment, Dr. Amira, but Akmal, I wanted to ask you, you spent some time in the USA. You studied over there, am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
So when you were over there, did you experience anything like that from the US people? Any kind of making you feel excluded or anything like that?
No. In the U.S., I've never experienced any racism, from the East Coast to the West Coast, Midwest. I've traveled, from coast to coast, from, small towns and Oklahoma and everywhere. So I haven't experienced anything. But what I'm saying is that there are three aspects to this whole thing that he appeals to.
Yeah.
First thing is that the Midwest and the Bible Belt, they have massive influence, money, and vote. So he has to appeal to them. No left-winger liberal will ever appeal to them. They are the Bible Belt. They are the religious people and so on. So he will appeal to them and he will probably use the religion card with them, right? Then he will use the crime and gangs and so on, that card with the middle class, okay? And this is what one analyst was saying, that majority of those who were earning less than 100K a year voted for him, and the majority of those who were earning over 100K voted for a liberal left-wing party. Now, that is a contradiction. It should actually be the poor that should vote for the Democrats, and it should be actually the rich which should vote the other way. But this is exactly as Athar was saying, that there is a disconnect between what the reality on the ground and the feeling. So there are, as I said from the very start, that there are these cohorts, these pockets that he appeals to. He does it very deliberately. So the religion card he will play, and he'll play it in the beginning like he played. But then obviously he has nice relationships and business relationships in the Middle East. He's best friends with MBS and all the other sheikhs and all the other businessmen. So what I'm saying is that there is the political Trump and there's the real Trump. And he believed that he needs to get into the office to make the real Trump come to the fore.
So playing a character for the right people is almost kind of what he's doing. He's playing the right card to the
Absolutely.
right.
He was on the television for years.
Yeah. There's a sense of acting that's got to go in with that, I'm sure. Dr. Amira, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to sexism from Trump, when it comes to racism from Trump, what's the outside of the US perspective? What's your perspective on things?
In terms of,
do you believe he's racist? Do you believe he's derogatory to women? Or do you believe that he is saying things for the good of the world?
well, to be honest with you, if you look at the general impression he has left for the world is that he wants to bring peace in. And in the past, of course, we have heard about how he has treated women and things like that. But this kind of heinous allegations, they happen in politics all over the world. So
Yep.
it doesn't necessarily mean that by doing character assassination, you are going to kill somebody's leadership qualities and all that. And of course, no one is perfect. There are good qualities and there are not so good qualities. So we just have to actually look up to the more positive side of him rather than looking at the negative side of him. If he wants to make his country, America, great again, and he works on his policies as he have promised, why not? Because it is, after all, America is a superpower. And how American internal affairs are working will have an influence on the global politics. We see not necessarily in the Middle East, but in Asia as well. And I would say that if we want him to do his job properly, I think one has to put his, personal life on one side and see what policies he brings in order to make his country prosper again.
Talking about kind of the pledges he's making and how he's going to make them prosper, two key topics, taxes and tariffs. He's bringing down corporation tax from 21% to 15%. He's putting a 60% levy on Chinese imports and 10% on the rest of the world. Is he opening up himself to another trade war with China?
Well, there is also a possibility, and I think he is very open about it. He has openly said during his election campaign that he is not going to make friends with China. And of course, like, people have to look at their own benefits in terms of the trade and all that. So I wouldn't be able to make a comment about American trade versus China. And of course, China is a very strong economic power as well. And of course, it can be a threat to countries like America and as well as Russia. So I think these superpowers, they've got a battle they have to, have with each other. And I think countries like developing countries, they basically, they look up to these superpowers to see what they can do to help with the countries who still need support from these superpowers. So I think, I don't see that their relationship with China will improve in the near future, but who knows? Politics is politics and everything is possible in politics.
Aftad, from the US perspective, with a 60% levy on Chinese imports, that means things become a little bit more expensive when they arrive for the consumer. Do you feel that as an American citizen?
Well, actually, Trump, most of the he says stuff, but he uses that leverage just to ignite more manufacturing in United States. Like, I will give you an example with the General Motor and Ford Motor Company. When he was a president, he told them that if you shift your plants to Mexico, I'm going to put 100% duties on your cars when you are going to sell it back to United States. And Ford and General Motor, they cancel their plan to shift auto plants from Detroit, Michigan, where he won this state. And those plants stays there, and the people there who were working there, they still have jobs. So, I mean, normally I don't see that he will go put 60% tariff or 100%. He's just using leverage to stop China from dumping their cheap labor products into the United States.
Is it mind games? Is that what we're putting it down to? Is that what we're seeing from him, Akmal?
I think he plays these mind games in the beginning, and like as I said earlier, the example was that he played this mind game with North Korea and threatened their extermination, and then he was best friends with North Korea.
Yeah.
He went and everything, and he actually single-handedly, he was against all odds, removed the threat of North Korean belligerence against the United States or any misadventure with that stroke. He wants to do that with Iran. He wants to do that with other countries. With China, I think it'll be more complex because his current new best friend, Elon Musk, is directly affected by Chinese imports because China is the largest manufacturer of electric vehicles. Tesla has virtual monopoly in the West, especially in the US. You bring in very high quality and massive variety of Chinese electric cars, which are far superior to Tesla in looks and in cost and in everything. Tesla will be ended. So I think that with China, especially with the electric vehicles, there would definitely be a personal hesitation, and of course, a general hesitation of the upset that he does not want the inexpensive Chinese cars to come in. In terms of other goods, I think there'll be a negotiation. He will obviously come, he's run these massive casinos and so on. So when you're
Yeah.
gambling, you're always, your poker has always got to be this stern face in the beginning. And then ultimately, you have to show your hand and have another little round of business. So I believe that he will look at these opportunities. On the political sense, I think he's more inclined to make friends with Russia than with China. So I think that one way that he can play with the establishment in the US is that, look, we have two enemies. One is a much bigger enemy in terms of its resources, economy, population, technology, and it's going to surpass us very soon. So the best bet is that we make friends with Russia and try to counter China's influence. So I think these will be the struggles that he will have. But I think that with electric vehicles, he will probably protect his friend.
Do you think that war and trade could come together? We've got the issue with China and Taiwan. We've obviously got the issue with Russia and Ukraine. Do you think these negotiations he could just try and wrap up into one? We're going to give you a 30% levy on the taxes instead of 60, but you need to back off from Taiwan. Is that a possibility or is that not?
Well, I personally think he will look at what benefits America, and I think anything that will be in their favor, he will negotiate. Because, I mean, this world doesn't work single-handedly. He has to shake hands with those who can be helpful to help him recover the economy of United States.
Yep. It's a tough one to call how he could get through. I mean, what's the feeling in America in terms of are you for Chinese goods? Are you against Chinese goods? I mean, a lot of Americans like the little label that says "Made in America," "Made in the USA." Is that the feeling still, or are you happy with these Chinese products coming in, Aftad?
Actually, American people are docile with these products. They have been used to with these products. They don't have that kind of animosity against like China. It's more like a political issue when it comes to election years. People, there is a heated debate about Chinese products and everything. But as a consumer, I mean, people look for the price and quality. And there is no, I don't think it's a national anti-China sentiment against Chinese goods yet. Like we hear about Japanese products. There was at one time in 60s or early when Japan was trying to get into US markets, there was a sentiment against the American used to call it rice eaters. We don't want to buy products from rice eaters, but that was faded out when Japan introduced their high quality goods. Then they just bought it, and the Toyota is actually the number one selling car in America for last decades or so.
What I liked in the election, or in the build-up to the election, was that Melania came out with her own voice. A lot of the time she's been tagged as this billionaire's wife, if you like. But she came out and she said that women should have the right, which I think a former First Lady and now the impending First Lady should have the right to do, come in and voice her own opinions.
Absolutely. I mean, a woman raising the voice, of course, she's speaking on behalf of millions of women who are there suffering because they were denied access to undergo an abortion. And I think they need to actually have some negotiations and give the right to states to decide on what they want based on their public opinion.
It's my understanding of it is that Trump wants to give it back to the states independently. However, what he will have as a mandate, or what he will have as part of that agreement, is that if there is something which happened, if someone is raped, if someone is incest, or if it's causing health issues for the mother, that they will have the right up to 24 weeks, regardless of the state, which I think is human rights. I think that's what we call that in the UK. Would we not all agree? So we've gone through his key pledges, some key points from the election. He's the second president ever to win a non-consecutive term. You'd have to go back, I think it's 132 years since the last one. He won the popular vote, which, I mean, 8 years ago, losing by 1 million votes on the popular vote, I think that's an impressive turnaround considering he lost the election in between. He has full power in the USA, at least for 2 years, with control of the Senate and the impending confirmation of control of the House. Is that good or is that bad for American politics, for Americans?
Well, I mean, if you look at it this way, most of the presidential election, first-term president normally get all three houses, presidential, White House, and the Senate and the Congress, and which is good that any president who is being elected, they cannot, they have to implement some of their promises as policies, and they cannot make an excuse that Congress did not wanted to support me because it was a Democratic or Republican Congress. So Trump not going to have any excuse to not to go for his policies, and it's in a good way too. And bad way that you can say that he can appoint more judges and controversial thing, and Congress and Senate is there to help him. So it's all about intention, what his actual intentions are,
And
in my opinion.
and as a Trump supporter, you believe his intentions are good with it?
I think so, because this time his team is absolutely phenomenal. You have Tucker Carlson, which is well-respected TV personality and very popular among the Republican voters and general independent voters. Then he has RFK Jr., he came from Democrats, and he brought a lot of rebellions with crowd with him. And he's in charge of transition team. So whatever Trump gonna be appointing, it will be recommended by RFK Jr. and his team. So this time we are very optimistic and hopeful that he will not be hiring and appointing new cons like last time Mike Pompeo and John Bolton, all these war hawks and warmongers who were in previous Bush and Cheney administration creating new wars for military-industrial complex. So we are hopeful that this time will be different because he has different people around him.
Well, just before we wrap things up, just to summarize, so term one for Trump, his first term, strong economy, 50-year low on jobs, and obviously he agreed the Abraham Accords deal. Biden's inflation over 9%. Obviously, the Afghanistan withdrawal, which we've spoken about, the immigration has been up substantially, and 2 major wars have broken out. The next 4 years for American politics is going to be one to watch, but can it be much worse than a Biden-Harris administration?
Who knows?
Who knows?
But I think
Yeah.
the message his victory has given a message to the world that the dynamics of world politics is changing, and it is the power of public, and it's not about establishment, it's not about what the media tells you, it's about what people want. That's how I look at it, and I just hope the world looks at it too.
And I think that's a perfect way to end the show. Thank you to my guest today, Dr. Amira, in the studio with me today. Aftad Syed in Houston, in the USA, telling us what it's like on the ground in America at the moment after the election, which, let's face it, has reversed things 4 years. Back to 2020, when Trump last was in power. And thank you to our guest from Suffolk today, Akmal Makdoum, who also shared his insights on that. He doesn't think Trump is completely insane, maybe playing some mind games, but ultimately the next 4 years will tell where America goes next. Is it J.D. Vance? Could we see an Obama back in president in 2029? Or are we going to see Donald Trump Jr. run? Let's find out. I'll see you in 4 years.